on the line to Professor Gerald Steinberg, who is president of NGO Monitor. And Gerald, we're getting you after your group, which is an independent Jerusalem-based research institution, presented an updated monograph entitled NGO Lawfare, Exploitation of Courts in the Arab-Israeli Conflict.
It traces and updates earlier work that we had done on a very wide series of legal cases, many of them very thin, most of them getting dismissed quite quickly, but the purpose of these legal cases against Israeli officials, including the head of the opposition, Tzipi Livni, including Dan Meridor, including a number of IDF officers, all of which are taking place under what's called universal jurisdiction clauses in European countries in the international criminal courts, to label these Israeli officials and Israel in general as war criminals.
And by the way, we just saw action taken in Britain, correct, which would make it more difficult for people to do that.
Well, in Britain, the legislation has been introduced to change what is an easily exploited law, a law that is easily used for political purposes, and there is now an attempt to change that so that not everybody, every activist, every anti-Israel activist, anti-American activist can abuse the legal system and claim universal jurisdiction or human rights violations to have someone arrested when getting off a plane at the airport. But it will take some time before that legislation is actually approved, and there will be a lot of opposition to that as well by people who are in favor of this kind of abuse.
But outside of Britain, getting back to your report now, we're finding that this kind of thing continues to happen. These cases are continuing to be presented?
Yes, and it's increasing. It's accelerating. We're still waiting to see whether the International Criminal Court will take the step that the Palestinian Authority and a wide number of NGOs have been pressing for, of indicting Israelis on alleged allegations of war crimes. We have the whole Goldstone mechanism, which is still very much in gear, and that may produce hundreds of additional cases. So this is an ongoing aspect, and the radius is increasing. And the purpose is a form of political warfare against Israel. It's exactly opposite of what the International Declaration, or the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that was adopted in 1948, it's the opposite of what that was supposed to accomplish.
You referred to the Goldstone mechanism, that of course referring to the report from, or on behalf of, the UN Human Rights Commission in the wake of Israel's Operation Cast Lead. People are using that report to back up their case because it accused Israel of war crimes.
Not only they are using that report, which has many, many references to war crimes, and all of which is essentially copied from claims and publications, I hesitate to use the word report, by groups like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. All of those, the Goldstone Commission was set up precisely for that purpose, in an alliance of the Islamic countries, the Arab countries that control the UN Human Rights Council, and their NGO colleagues and allies in this process. And you can trace it very clearly. You can even go back to many other operations, the Lebanon War 2 years before that, and back to Operation Defensive Shield in Jenin in 2002, where these NGOs that have abused the language of human rights, working with Arab and Muslim countries in the United Nations for this purpose of lawfare, and Goldstone is basically the most damaging application of this kind of distortion.
And the NGOs that you're referring to are Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, other groups as well?
Well, they are the international superpowers. Those are the groups that really have the greatest responsibility for this kind of abuse. But there are many other organizations. The report that we just published points to the central role of Palestinian organizations that use the term human rights, a group called Palestinian Center for Human Rights, an organization called Al-Haq, and other groups that are very publicly involved in these kinds of lawfare processes. PCHR held a conference in Cairo, which was funded, in which they thank the European Union, and that's part of the problem, is a lot of European government money ostensibly going for human rights, which is actually being used for the opposite of human rights, going through many, many of these organizations. So it's quite a wide network. It's not confined to a few organizations, and we're talking about hundreds of millions of euros and pounds and other forms of currency that fuel this process.
Professor Gerald Steinberg is president of NGO Monitor. Professor Steinberg, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, David.
In the